Hi there, my name is Ewan Nicholson. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Remembering Love. The title of today's video is the importance and necessity of the practice of being open-hearted. So what I'd like to look at today is why being open-hearted is so important, why it's necessary, and why I use the word practice. Because being open-hearted, sadly, right or wrong, for most of us doesn't come as our default position. So I'd like to kind of look at why that is and how we can try work towards making it more of a default position rather than something that we have to kind of keep coming back to. So the first thing is, what is being open-hearted? When I talk about and I say the words open-hearted, what does that conjure up? And on one level, if we want to get an idea of what is it to be open-hearted, a really good example is just little children. If you look at 3, 4, 5, that kind of age, kids at that age are just naturally open-hearted. And you see in that open-heartedness an aliveness, a joy, a trust, an innocence. There is something that's just in their eyes and their demeanor that feels open and vulnerable. And they are open and vulnerable. And I think our natural tendency to adore and protect and elevate children of that age is that because I think we see something in them that was once in ourselves and we want to kind of protect it and acknowledge it. But what occurs for a lot of us, and most of us, we have that open-heartedness, and as we grow older and as we start in this world and we have dysfunctional families, we live in a pretty dysfunctional culture and society, little by little, bit by bit, our openness, our vulnerability, our sensitivity, our generosity, our love starts to feel like a liability rather than an asset. And little by little, we shut down, we defend, we guard, and we protect. Because we start feeling vulnerability is associated with pain and hurt. And who wants pain and hurt? So little by little, we protect ourselves, we develop shields, we develop masks, and we close our hearts down. And all of us here and there find little pockets where we can feel more open-hearted, be it with our kids, be it with our spouses, friends. But to society as a whole, I think a lot of us are very clear on the fact that it's best not to be, because you end up being taken advantage of and you end up being hurt. And what can occur, and I know this for myself, you can end up feeling very cynical about the world, about life. You look at the news, look what's going on, and you can feel this judgmentalness, this sense of distrust of people, of society, of politicians, of businesses, of just everything that's going on. And when you feel that, there's a sense of you just have to close off. It's like, being open-hearted is just like being stabbed over and over. So you have to shut down, become a little bit cynical, a little bit distrustful in order to be able to function in this world. And it feels justified. It feels like, well, what other way is there to be? The problem with that is our hearts give us a wellspring to a joy and an aliveness in life that we can end up feeling our distrust and cynicism is rationalized, justified, and understandable. But by doing that, we're cutting ourselves off from that wellspring, that openness. And what ends up occurring is that we become smaller as a result. That closed-heartedness is a small heart. And therefore, the practice of open-heartedness is the practice of reliving and regaining a trust in life, an openness to people, a non-judgmentalness, a generosity of spirit, an openness of love, forgiveness, compassion, kindness, gentleness, all these kind of things that come from being open-hearted, independent of the pain that it may bring, independent of the hurt that it may attract. So we don't do it to feel good. We do it because we're aiming to be bigger people. We're aiming not to live from a smallness and cynicism and judgmentalness. Rather, we're aiming to live from an openness and love. That if we want to look at it, just look at it in kids. And we're trying to regain that because it is just a better way to approach this world. And I saw a documentary on this woman who forgave the man who murdered her daughter. And the man was her husband, and I can't remember the details of how the murder happened, but he murdered her. And it was really about her process of visiting him in jail and not only forgiving him, but loving him and developing a relationship with him. And it was so admirable and so amazing to see this woman and her open-heartedness and the courage and tenacity and bigness of someone to be able to sit across from someone who murdered your daughter and not only forgive them, but actively love them. And you saw the impact it had on him and his process of redemption and his process of healing and forgiving himself and whatever may be involved, that her act of mercy and compassion had this ripple effect on this person's life and in her life. And on one level, you know, for us, it may not require something as big or as grand as, you know, forgiving someone who's murdered one of our children. For most of us, being open-hearted on a day-to-day basis is approaching the world from a more trusting, non-judgmental, cynical position. And that is hard because our cynicism and our judgments seem to be amplified and justified over and over and over. We create little groups where we feel like we're right, everyone else is wrong. We look at people as terrible people or dumb people. I mean, I know I do a lot of the time, and therefore we create this kind of separation. And being open-hearted is looking at the world and people from a position that everyone is working with where they are at. Everyone is doing their best within the framework of what they've gone through, and viewing everyone in the world from a position of compassion. There is a meditation in a book I have of the Dalai Lama's where he talks about imagining that through millions of lives or billions of lives, at some point you've been the mother to every single sentient being that's alive on this earth. At some point you lived a life as the mother of that person. And it's a meditation really about opening our hearts up and viewing every single being from a position of compassion, the way a mother would view a child. That is not the easy path. It is not the straightforward path, but in the end it is the path that invites us to be bigger, to be more generous. And if the world needs anything right now, it needs us to be tender heroes. Rumi, in a passage he wrote about gratitude, talks about the path of tender heroes, of the heroes of tenderness. And what's interesting about that line is the pairing of the word tenderness and heroism. You know, to be heroic is to be brave and courageous. To be tender is to be gentle, kind, and affectionate. And we often don't, when we think of heroism, we think of battle and force and aggression and conquering. We don't really pair heroism with tenderness and kindness and gentleness. But this is the kind of heroism that we need for ourselves and for the world, is the heroism to be gentle in the face of cynicism, to be compassionate in the face of judgment, to be kind in the face of hatred. And that takes courage, that takes bravery, and it takes awareness. To me, being open-hearted is working to practice on a day-to-day basis, living from that position of love and generosity, and trying to remind myself to be the bigger person, to have a bigger heart. And if I forget that, I try to come back to that. If I lose sight of that, I try to remember it. And the truth is, living from an open heart is more of a relaxed, joyful place to live. It's not a world of cynicism and judgment. It's a world of love, kindness, and generosity. And I don't get it right often, more often than not, but it is a compass point that I can come back to. It is an awareness that as I start the day, as I go through the day, do I want to approach this with openness, or do I want to approach this with cynicism and judgment? Do I want to look at myself and my own failings and issues from an open-heartedness? Do I want to look at the world and everyone else in it from a position of open-heartedness? And it's not the easy position to take, but it is the one that is more fruitful and allows us to live larger and greater lives. So thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. And now I'd just like to finish with the small excerpt of this poem of Rumi's on gratitude and the heroes of tenderness. Thank you. To be grateful for your life, every detail of it, and your face will come to shine like the sun. And everyone who sees it will be made glad and peaceful. Persist in gratitude, and you will slowly become one with the sun of love. And love will shine through you in all its healing joy. This path of gratitude is not for children. It is the path of tender heroes, the heroes of tenderness who, whatever happens, keep burning on the altar of their hearts the flame of adoration.